everyone, I am Melody. Today we are going to talk about Black history in New Brunswick because February is Black History Month in Canada.
The reason why we get involved with Black history in New Brunswick is that most of the time people don't understand or don't know about New Brunswick's Black history. It's not only Black History Month in New Brunswick, it's Black History Month across Canada. But in particular, right here in New Brunswick, it is it's a big vacant space where in the history books and in the history stories of how or what happened in the 1700s and the 1800s here in New Brunswick connected with our Black community. Well, Melody, the explanation on our boards in this little room here, I say little room because we're in, as you know, we're in need of a heritage room, really. We've only got a few of the things up on the wall, but as we talked in the very beginning about how did the history start and why all of a sudden are we involved in such depth in Black history, well, right here in New Brunswick, the ship called the Camel came to these parts in 1783, and that ship came with, there were Quakers, Loyalist Quakers, and there were Loyalist Black folks that came with them. And that is the only time that the Blacks and the Whites came to this province together, and when they settled here, they lived in harmony. An hour away from St. John down in Beaver Harbor. And how that came about was by accident, really. I just happened to meet someone and said, where was the sign that said no slave owners allowed? And this gentleman said, you know, it's a coincidence, but I live next door to that burial ground. So, and that's how that story started. That's how you see the board, the picture boards that show the camel that came here, which is the ship that brought the Quakers and the Black folks together, and they lived in harmony. The next one, of course, shows now that since we've opened that story about Beaver Harbor, there's more information at that burial site of the Quakers in Beaver Harbor. Beaver Harbor, the burial site is on Quaker Lane, and I got talking with a gentleman by the name of Mr. Hawkins, James Hawkins, and then we had another Deborah Coleman who knows all the history about the Quakers and the Underground Railroad, and she came on board with us, and then it was Florence came on board, that's Jimmy's wife, and the four of us came together and we put that story together. So now that we have even talked about it, we have a stone down there that tells the story about how the Quakers came to an agreement of how they were going to live in harmony. We now have a meeting house, a replica of the old meeting house, built just in 2017, and that's how that just blossomed. It just bloomed in great depth about how people working together. I guess we're still working together when you look at what that community did for Black history in Beaver Harbor. Then the next thing we may look at is Willow Grove. As you see, the picture boards talk about Willow Grove, and Willow Grove was the place where the refugees came here, and 1815, and they came here to the tune, and they came by way of St. John, and they came with a ship called the Regulus, and at that time, they came, landed, 371 folks came here, and some of them was distributed out into Willow Grove, and 71 to be exact. And of course, the Willow Grove burial ground is one of the picture boards that you see there, and a picture board of the church then, and things like that. So those are some of the examples that we have here in our little room at 165 Union Street. The other thing I want to show you is the Granby Westfield side of things here. So you have a good story about Granby Westfield. We talk about 1812, which is refugees timeline, and then we talk about Loyalist timeline because he came and left in, he figured out the land grants for everybody in 1787 so that they could get their properties and get their numbers and do the things that they had to do to receive their land. So again, we're talking about the type of land that was given to each one of them and how many acres it was. In these cases, sometimes it was just the minimums of 40 to 50 acres. Melody, really the first person that I'd like to talk about, because Matthew Decosta is a name that most people don't really know who that is. And really, Matthew Decosta came here when Samuel D. Champlain came to St. John. And he was a part of discovering all the different areas, whether it be the St. John River, whether it be certain points in New Brunswick. But what is forgotten, and people don't realize the fact that with him came a person who could connect with the First Nations, they could connect with the French people that were here then, he could connect with all indigenous peoples, and he was a black person. The next item that we all have to be thankful for is this lady here, Viola Desmond. Viola Desmond remains, you know, she's an icon of human rights and freedoms. You know, the freedom movement that she created in Nova Scotia was a very big standout happening in that timeline. Viola Desmond was a Nova Scotia, a very successful Nova Scotia business lady. And she, you know, she refused to leave a white theater in a movie theater in 1946 and was, you know, put in jail for it. And there was all kinds of things made up about her that convicted her, and she had to pay a fine, and all these things was, you know, it was just unbelievable. And she stood up because she went to a movie theater. She wanted to sit in an area that was supposedly whites only, and she said, I'm going to sit there. So then they came up with all kinds of silly things, that she didn't pay enough money, so therefore she was cheating the organizations and all kinds of stupid things. She stood up, she sat where she wanted to sit, and that was it. The other person that's outstanding, and I can remember this from when I was a youngster, is the William Hall. William Hall, from Nova Scotia also, and William Hall won the Victoria Cross. Not only did he win the Victoria Cross, he was the first person to win the Victoria Cross. So these are famous, outstanding black people who are just now getting recognized. William Hall, there's a stamp out on William Hall now. Matthew Decosta. There's a stamp on Matthew Decosta. And the lady that was stood up for us in the beginning, Viola Desmond, there is a $10 bill with her face on it. First ever that I've seen in Atlantic Canada where they've recognized a black person. And just because they stood up and was accounted for and said, we're not going to sit in the back anymore, we're going to sit where we want to sit. Melody, it's great to be able to sit and talk to you, and you have some great questions about Black history in New Brunswick, and I certainly appreciate that, and I certainly appreciate that you've come in and you're going to sit down with the rest of us here at the PRUDE office. This is the PRUDE office. This is the place that we do most of our work connected to the community. It's a multicultural organization now. It's an organization for folks of color as well. And it's just, you know, it's just a place that has to be. There always has to be a PRUDE Incorporated. But one of the biggest things that happened in this timeline is the fact that all of a sudden we became aware of where is our New Brunswick Black history. And the question has been asked over and over again, why are you so interested in New Brunswick Black history? Well, it's the story of our ancestors. And that story has to be told. We went through some trying times in the 1700s and the 1800s, and as you have seen with some of the picture boards, with some of the functions that you have attended, it's a story that has to be told, and it's not in the libraries the way we would like to see it. It's not in the school system yet. We're very busy with PRUDE Incorporated. They're doing the school districts now very often, especially in the month of February. It's just a full month of presentations to the schools, which is a big beginning for us. So my interest in general, and the interest is with the New Brunswick Black History Society right now. I'm still connected with PRUDE, but we're still wanting to find our New Brunswick Black history. And in order to do that, we have to go out there and collect the history. And we have been doing that. We've gone out to the communities in Beaver Harbor. And, you know, God bless Jimmy Hawkins and Deborah Coleman and Florence Hawkins for coming to the table and saying, okay, what needs to be done to let the rest of the world know about the Black history and the Quaker history here in Beaver Harbor? And they've sat there at the table for the last 4 years. And end results for that is, and I use Beaver Harbor first because they were the first people who came to the table and said, what do we do to help you find your history and remind people of what the Quakers did 235 years ago. That's when we first started, was 4 years ago now. So, and that's, you know, you've seen how that's grown by looking at the picture boards. The other thing is other people that have to be thanked. We have to thank people like Ray and Jan Riddell, who helped me find the history, or help us find the history in Grand Bay, Westfield. We have to be thankful to the people like the Irving family who helped us bring back the history story of Willow Grove by putting stones out there that tell the history of refugees coming, and it tells the history of what the black folks said about an individual who helped them by building a church in Willow Grove. The big thing now is we need a heritage room or we need a heritage building. Let's start with a room. Let's start with a big heritage room in Fredericton. Let's start with one in St. John, because this is where the refugees came. This is where the loyalists came. Many of them came to our harbor and stopped here first, and then was distributed across the province. So where are these heritage rooms of black history in the province of New Brunswick? I mean, we just looked next door to the sister province, Nova Scotia, and they've got 3 huge buildings that represent black culture. And New Brunswick haven't even got a heritage room. God bless the government, they've helped us where they could, and God bless the people right now, because they're coming to the desk saying, yes, we'll help you with this, we'll help you with that. But we need to collect. That's what we're doing. Collect all the material that we can collect. Find all the materials. Make the changes that make people live more comfortably together.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you have learned many things about Black History Society in New Brunswick.